Welcome to Couch Talk with Molly, where Molly gets to talk it up with some fantastic people from First Pres Norman.
Okay, well, welcome to Couch Talk. We're going to pretend that we're in the church in the atrium, even though we are not. And I am here, and I just learned with Elise Gradanis. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay, what heritage is the last name?
Gradanis is a Dutch last name, specifically from Friesland.
I don't even know where that is.
It's a small region of the Netherlands where they speak Fries, so it's a slightly different language from Dutch, and the name is Frisian, but it's been Latinized as well. Pretty fancy.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to First Presbyterian Church in Norman.
Well, I am a master's student in violin performance at the University of Oklahoma. And so I moved to Norman in August of 2019 to start that program. And before I moved, I thought one of the main things I wanted to do was to make sure I could find a church to not belong to necessarily as a member, but belong to as a semi-member. And I actually, when I visited Norman for my audition in February, I saw First Presbyterian and I said, oh, well, Presbyterian churches are very similar to Christian Reformed Church I grew up in.
Okay.
So I thought, I'll try First Pres first. And then I went and I thought, I love this, so I kept going.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. So what was it that you loved about it?
I loved the warm, welcoming atmosphere of everybody who greeted me when I came in, and then when I sat down, everyone seemed to want to figure out who I was and make me feel at home. And somebody even gave me her phone number and said, call me if you ever need anything.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was really nice, and I did take her up on that, because then I spent a week not knowing anybody and school hadn't started, and so I called her and I said, I haven't seen another human face in days, back before we had this pandemic. That wasn't normal back then, but
True. Yes, this was during normal time, because this was a year ago. So has it been a year that you've been in the master's program?
Well, I started in August, so not a year. But
not
yeah,
quite a year.
2 semesters. I finished
2 semesters,
my second semester.
Yay! So how many more do you have to go?
2.
Just 2 more?
Yeah.
Wow. So what do you want to do with your master's degree?
I want to teach music in schools, or potentially teach in other capacities with different programs. I'm kind of open to different opportunities that might arise, but I got my undergraduate degree in music education, and I thought, I'll get my master's in performance, and then I can perform and teach and be a better teacher as well. So
brilliant. So what is it about music? What drew you in about music? How did you get started with it?
Well, my family is pretty musical, at least my mom is a piano teacher, and her main job is an educator. She taught 5th grade, and she taught education at Calvin College in Grand Rapids, and now she actually has your job at a Presbyterian church in Grand Rapids.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
yeah,
love it.
Yeah. So anyway, so music, though, she was a piano teacher, and so I grew up with a lot of music in her house, and I was.
So did you start with piano?
Well, I was apparently very bored as a kindergartner. And so my parents said, let's find her something to do. And my aunt played the violin. So she said, start her on violin. So I started violin when I was 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did it
Yeah.
take you long to grow to like it?
I liked it right away. I also played piano as with my mom as my teacher, and I loved to sing, and I would pick up whatever instrument was laying around and try to play it. So I always loved it.
All right. So tell us about your faith story then. So you grew up in the Christian Reformed church. And so
Mhm.
what was that like? Do you see, I mean, you said it's very similar to Presbyterian, but have you seen any differences or what are the similarities? Just tell us a little bit more.
Some distinctions I noticed that I love about the Presbyterian Church is how service focused
Mhm.
the Presbyterian Church is. Just really thinking about how can we bring justice to the world and to whatever area we're in, which is also a focus in the Christian Reformed Church, but I notice it a lot
Mhm.
in Presbyterian. But yeah,
Yeah.
for my like journey with
Yeah.
faith, I mean, I did I was, baptized, went to church every Sunday. I always played music in church. I started playing music in church when I was 4.
Right. Playing the
Yeah.
violin.
Yeah. So that was really always part of what I do. I don't make a big distinction between performance and worship. To me, anytime I perform, it's worship, and when I'm performing in a church service, it feels right because that's like where I guess my music is always like a communication with God, and so when I'm in church, it feels the most appropriate of a setting for it.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. It's definitely a gift that God has given you. And so that's awesome that you view it that way. What have been some of your faith influences?
So I'm sitting here, uh, and you can't see it because I'm looking at it, but this is my mirror at home.
Oh, wow.
Um, and you can see that those are a bunch of different passages from the Bible. The one that's right in the center says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee," from Isaiah 26:3.
Beautiful.
And that was from a sermon that my grandpa preached a couple of years ago. He and I used to um, so he retired from preaching when I was about 5, but then he continued to preach just as much, if not more, that
Hmm. Hmm.
right after he retired, but just in different places. And so when he would preach different places, I would often come play the violin, and so we kind of had a fun partnership going. And he was like one of those people who I just admire the way that he put his um, theology and his philosophy of life and of God into action.
Mm.
And so that's why I have kind of that verse at the center, is that's the way he lived, is his mind was always stayed on God. And yeah, and he passed away about 2 years ago today. And uh, yeah, my family talks about him a lot, thinks about him a lot, because he was a really big influence on my life in that way. In the Christian Reformed Church, there's a contemporary testimony that's like, it's not a confession, it's not a creed, but it's similar. It's a testimony, and it's called "Our World Belongs to God." Really beautiful writing that was done by a committee. I don't know exactly when, 80s or 90s, I think. But my grandpa was on the committee, and he was the one that actually, after they had come up with all their ideas, he was the one who actually put pen to paper and wrote it. So sometimes we use the testimony in our church liturgy, and it's always like, oh, grandpa wrote this.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else that you think we should know about you or that you would like to tell the church?
I guess I would like to thank the congregation for being so nurturing to me, and bringing a lot of joy and stability and help and comfort, all of those things, in very practical ways, as well as just more personal ways. But yeah, I think that First Pres is one of the major reasons I was able to stay in Norman, complete my master's in spite of being in a place where I didn't know anyone ahead of time. So I'm really, really thankful to God for this church. So
This has been Couch Talk with Molly, and we are really, really grateful to have Elise share her gifts with us.
It wasn't so bad, right?
I made it.